Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. We're going to talk about my optimal draft strategy for your fantasy football drafts in 2021. Whether you're drafting your friends and family leagues or whether you're drafting a best ball on DraftKings or on Underdog Fantasy or anywhere else, these are my tips. I'm going to go through some advice for you on this video on how to approach your draft while in it, and I'm going to give you my 5 tips that end up being my optimal draft strategy. So let's go.
He's a legend.
All right, guys, our promo with Rotowire.com is still going on. Absolutely free 10-day all access subscription. The link is right down below in the pinned comment. Go give it a click. Go sign up. Get your 10 days. I can't do better than free, guys. Go check out Rotowire.com and support the places that support the channel. I appreciate you guys. Rotowire.com/smizzle. Let's take a look into the things that I wanted to talk about. I said that there's a lot of things that we want to talk about in this video based on, the optimal draft strategy. If you like this video, drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel, be sure that you ring the notifications bell, leave me a reply down below, do all the things. And if you wanted to jump into our Discord, there's a link in the description down below. Click show more, jump in there, and if you're a channel member over here on YouTube, you get access to the subs only rooms. That's mostly where I hang out on all different sorts of topics, every sport. Help yourself get better at season long, at daily fantasy, at everything. So jump into the Discord. Only way that you get access to those sub only channels is to either be a subscriber on Twitch or a channel member here on youtube.com. So I understand that there's a ton of different draft strategies, right? One, based on what your league is, based on how you're playing, what your league rules are. I need to ask you to please be a little bit flexible with me with kind of how this stuff plays out. Because in some of your leagues, some of you are doing super flex leagues. Some of you play an 8-man home league. Some of you guys have ridiculous scoring for quarterbacks that moves them up the board. Some of you guys play standard scoring. I don't know who, they're just boomers, I guess, play standard scoring. Some are half PPR, some are full PPR. These rules are more guided towards either transactional leagues, which is, you make trades, you pick guys up off the waiver wire, or best ball leagues that are 12 teamers, and they apply to 0.5 PPR and they apply to full PPR. So if you utilize these draft strategies in those drafts and my tips in those drafts, I think that you'll set yourself up for greater success, not just in this year. These do change from year to year as the landscape changes, but it's just, you'll be a better drafter and you'll have more success in your fantasy football leagues. So number one, be nimble. Okay, make sure that you're not sticking to one absolute draft strategy, right? Like some people, if you look at the ADPs, you got the first round here. This is underdog fantasy. You look at the ADPs. Let's go in the big dog because this is the high stakes tournament, right? So you've got 5 running backs up top, then few pass catchers, and the end of the first round is kind of like running back, running back, running back, running back, running back. That's 5. 6 pick is Kelsey. 7, 8, 9. Then 10, 11, 12. Calvin Ridley sneaking into the first round over Austin Eckler in the big dog tournament. So that's how the first round is kind of shaking out. So I don't go into a draft saying I am going to have this strategy. The drafts that I do are mostly best ball drafts at this point because based on my involvement in daily fantasy, I don't have time to babysit rosters and to manicure 50 fab budgets a week and make waiver wire transactions and then sweat and worry on Sunday morning of who I'm going to play in a league that might win a little bit of money when I've got like tens of thousands involved in daily fantasy on the line, and I'm going to focus more on that. So like my season long leagues kind of went to crap for a long time because of that, and I just stopped playing season long outside of best ball. The only season long league that I do to this point that has transactions is the Scott Fishbowl, which is a great league, thousands of teams. It raises a lot of money for kids charities, so like that's why I still play that league. But mostly my exposure is best ball, but these things do apply to transactional leagues, so you got to be nimble. So like for me, that means if I draw a top 5 pick in a draft and I'm a 0 RB drafter, or if you're a 0 RB drafter, if you get the number 1 pick and you don't take Christian McCaffrey, you're dumb. or Dalvin Cook, whatever. If you don't take one of these super stud running backs in that spot because I have to take a wide receiver here because that's the brand, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You have to adjust to what those sort of things are. So if your draft room is over drafting running backs, shift to a more wide receiver heavy strategy. If your draft room is drafting quarterbacks really early, take the extra value of taking those extra position players when you'd like to take a quarterback. Don't react. Be the one to set the trends, start the trains, start the trends within the draft. Don't be the one that follows all the trends. Be the one that starts them. Should you wait on QB? Should you wait on running back or go running back heavy? To me, that really depends on your draft slot. So like I said, if I draft in the top like 5 or 6, I'm probably going to be taking a running back in the first round. If I'm drafting near the back end of the first round, I'm probably going to be taking one of these super stud wide receivers and then come back with a running back at the top end of the second round. That's just kind of how I draft. I'm nimble with where I pick. If I have a top 8 or 9 pick, I tend to go running back. If I draft after that, I tend to go wide receiver or Kelsey in the first round, unless it's something like that other video that we did a while ago where we had the 9 pick and for some reason Alvin Kamara slid to 9. It's like, yeah, I'm taking Kamara at 9. Got to be nimble and deal with the things that you're supposed to be dealing with as they unfold. Should you stack? This is kind of a big thing in best ball, right? You want to get as much exposure to quarterback and wide receiver stacks as you possibly can, right? So like quarterbacks go typically much later. We're in the era of the mid-round QB at this point. Things that we saw in previous years. Patrick Mahomes' first year. And before that, late round QB was basically the strategy because quarterback scoring is so condensed around, there's just not much differentiation on a week between the number 3 scoring quarterback or 2 scoring quarterback. There's always one guy that has like a big day. Even the number 1 guy might have like 35 points in fantasy with bonuses. And the 10th guy will have like 22. It's like the gap between those two is nowhere near as large as the number 1 running back or wide receiver and like the 10th highest scoring running back and wide receiver. So being a wide receiver 1 or a running back 1 on a week is way more important than being a quarterback 1 on a week, because a lot of guys you can find on the waiver wire will end their week being a QB1 on the week. So stacking in best ball is very much a thing. Single stacks, double stacks with pass catchers, including pass catching running backs, something that you're going to want to do in best ball because of how powerful that is, especially in a format like best ball where you don't have to choose your lineup on the week. So if a team blows up, the quarterback has 4 touchdowns and 3 of them are the guys that you have, you're going to capture all of that upside and it's going to propel you, especially if you're playing in tournaments in best ball where you have to progress through the playoff weeks and outscore everybody to get to the next round. It's a week in, week out thing as opposed to a total points on the season. In transactional leagues and season long, it's a bit of a different story. Stacking isn't something that's entirely as necessary. Yeah, you want to capture upside, but like honestly, you want to spread your variance a little bit more because you're trying to win a game. Every week is a 1 week and it's not a total points league. So in total points leagues, I lean more towards that. In non-transactional leagues, I lean more and place way more emphasis on stacking than I do in season long leagues. The other thing is once you're in the draft, this is something that I don't know if a lot of people really take heart in because and it happens to all of us, right? It's like I look at the teams that I've drafted here on Underdog Fantasy, and some of them are great, some of them are not, and sometimes things get away from you. So like this team right here, we drafted on stream. This is that Alvin Kamara at the 9th pick team. Like absurd that we got that. Unfortunately, I have Travis Etienne and he's out for the season. It's a war of attrition. Is best ball, just is what it is. But on the other bright side of things, we got Darrell Henderson at the 129th pick, and now his ADP is in the low 50s. So we got that. As I said, I prioritize stacking. So I have Tom Brady and I have Mike Evans on this team. So I have guys that pan out and work together. I also have Gronkowski as a secondary stack. What I ended up doing with this team back then when we drafted this one, because it was like a month ago at this point, Russ Wilson was like the 60th or 62nd player picked on ADP, and he was still available to me at the 88th pick. So the value was absolutely obvious to me at that point. And while I wasn't planning on drafting Russ Wilson, How could I pass him up? And so I forced a stack later with Gerald Everett. So identifying targets and pivots ahead of time and being nimble is extremely, extremely, extremely important when it comes to how you're doing things. How many times have you queued guys up and like everybody takes them ahead of you? And then you're like, oh God, it's my pick. I don't know what to do. Whether it's in your friends and family league at home, or whether it's an online league where like on Underdog or DraftKings, where you've got what, 30 seconds to make a pick in a fast draft. It's a totally different story. So identifying where you want to go and how to pivot along the way. Like I said, once I got into this draft and we were in like the 5th round, Russ Wilson was not somebody that I was going to target after getting Calvin Ridley and Mike Evans and Julio Jones earlier in this draft. I was like, okay, I'll probably end up with Tannehill. I'll probably end up with Tom Brady as my quarterback, or maybe after those guys go, I'll take Matt Ryan, even though he's kind of a statue, right? I like quarterbacks who are a little bit more mobile that are not named Tom Brady because of how much floor those rushing yards give you. So this is an example on this particular team of how I kind of had to pivot because of the value that fell to me. And then I created a stack later with Gerald Everett around 136. So here are my 5 tips that I've been drafting by. Things that I've used as my optimal draft strategy for 2021. First, if I have a top 10 pick in the draft, top 8 or 9 pick in the draft, I'm probably going bell cow and chill. Some people call it hero running back. Some people call it modified 0 RB. I don't adopt any of those things. I draft what the based on what the draft gives me. I do what the game tells me to do, as opposed to me forcing the game to do what I want it to do, which kind of, for me, works. And I think that hero running back has been the best strategy this season. You take that big dog that's going to get you 300 to 350 touches on the year, and then you pepper in as many pass catchers as you can. Premium tight end, bunch of wide receivers. Because very simply, I know a lot of people are robust running back. You got to have a lot of running backs, and you got to take a running back in 3 of the first 4 rounds. Otherwise, you're just not going to get there this year. I disagree with that. And if you go back and watch the 0 running back video that I published at the beginning of August or late July, which not a lot of people watch, it's got like 1,700 views. Go look at who we were targeting late in drafts when we were doing those earlier in draft season drafts. Guys like James Robinson. Darrell Henderson had just moved up, and it, at the time, was my heaviest rostered running back at that point in time. Gus Edwards, who with J.K. Dobbins out has now become the guy. And a bunch of other players who have now risen in draft value because of how volatile running back is. So not spending as much draft capital on running backs in the first 3, 4, 5 rounds of drafts is, to me, part of the optimal strategy. Second part of that, I try not to draft more than 2 running backs in the first 9 or 10 rounds of a draft. I'm loading up on wide receivers. I've been trying to get one of those premium tight ends, because once you get past like 5 or 6 or 7 tight ends, it really gets kind of murky outside of like Logan Thomas, who's been outstanding so far. So like he's one guy that I'm targeting at the back end around. I've been getting around round 9 all through draft season, even though his ADP has risen since then, and I don't know if you can get him at that point anymore. I have a ton of him at this point. And mid-round QB to go along with that, especially stacking them with one of those super premium wide receivers that you have. That running back and chill strategy with those super premium pass catchers, considering that 1 target equals 2.8 carries. So if you get 3 guys that get 250 carries, you're like, hey, I'm looking great. If I get 4 guys that are going to get 125 to 150 targets, my team should theoretically score a lot more points than your team, especially when you add in the fact that running back is way more fragile, way more likely to get injured than our wide receivers. So that's kind of the second way that I go. If you're looking for those back-end running backs to couple with that hero running back, we're looking for 40% running backs. These are guys that are not going to carry the ball or be on the field for 90% of snaps. They're not going to be the bell cow guy. They're not going to be the lead dog or the alpha on their team, whatever somebody wants to call them. But realistically speaking, there's like 2 running backs that get like over 80 to 85% of their team's running back snaps and running back touches. More often, running backs are getting 60 to 65% of the work. So if I can get a guy that's going to get 40% of the running back snaps and 40% of the running back touches, I have myself somebody who already has value and has the opportunity, if the guy in front of him gets injured, as often happens with running backs in the NFL, you have that guy that's going to step in. I'm not going to handcuff those guys. I want to try and capture 100% of the upside, not use 2 roster spots at getting 50%. Now that may be different in best ball than in transaction leagues, right? But in transaction leagues, you have your free agent budget. And you know that there's going to be running backs that are going to pop up on your fab budget on the waiver wire that you're going to be able to bid for and pick up. So why spend draft capital on these guys that you're most likely going to have to replace 1, if not 2 of them as the season goes along? You can easily budget your fab money to spend on those superstar running backs, and you're still going to get usage out of those 40% guys who have the option to, or the opportunity to become a 70% guy at some point, as well as all the love that you're going to get from those superstar wide receivers. Targets. The next one, this is number 4. Targets, whether it's going to be one of your running backs or whether it's going to be these premium wide receivers who get 125 to 175 targets in a year. Every one target is worth 2.8 carries when it comes to expected fantasy scoring. If you're playing PPR, a 10-yard run is equal 1 point. If you're playing PPR and that guy gets a 10-yard catch, that's 2 points, worth twice as much. Your expectation for guys who get a ton of targets is much higher than running backs who don't expect to get targets at all. So targets at running back, at tight end, and at wide receiver. Don't reach for touchdowns. Touchdowns are extremely variant. Targets. And the last draft tip that I have in terms of my optimal draft strategy was a part of the first one. Mid-round quarterbacks, preferably those who have running ability. If you did not check out my importance of running quarterbacks in 2021 video, go check that video out as well for the more in-depth discussion of what that means and why. They basically give you, with their rushing attempts, guys that get like 8 rush attempts or more per game. And we have a bunch of them, whether it's Lamar Jackson, whether it's Jalen Hurts, whether it's, it used to be Josh Allen, but it's not anymore. Guys that are, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, players that are going to give you a massive floor with their legs. Kyler Murray, exactly. As they run the ball 8 to 12 times a game, they're starting that game just on yardage with about 6 to 7 fantasy points before they throw a pass and without working in if they get a rushing touchdown on top of it. It is so much of a possible advantage for you to start with that floor. And then if they throw for like 225 and 1 touchdown, that's a 20-point fantasy day. It's so much easier for these running quarterbacks to get you to that point. Now, if you want to target a pocket plus quarterback, guys like Burrow, guys like Herbert, at this point, guys like Josh Allen. I think Allen's more of a mobile quarterback at this point. And based on my categories, I have 4 categories for quarterback. I have running quarterbacks. I just named a bunch of them. We have mobile quarterbacks, guys like Tannehill, guys like Josh Allen. There are pocket plus quarterbacks, Herbert, Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, guys who can run when it's there for them to do, but like it's not like their game. It's just something they have in their locker. And then there's statues. Tom Brady, Matt Ryan. They ain't running. Much harder for the statues. Much less path to a 25 or 30 point fantasy day for the statues than there is for the running quarterbacks and the mobile quarterbacks. I hope that those tips helped you. I wish you the best of luck in your fantasy drafts coming up in the next 2 weeks. Drop a comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and look out for another video over my face.
He's a legend.